Hello there. Dementia and Alzheimer's. What a cheerful topic. No wonder this isn't something that there's a lot of information out there about. So, pretty much everything I do, I like to take the shamanic perspective. And what I'm going to do with this one, I'm going to start off with the pragmatic perspective. So, there's going to be more than one film about this subject. So, dementia and Alzheimer's actually manifest before people are really aware of what's going on. This is very important to grasp. Very unfortunate for everyone concerned. So it means by the time diagnosis is starting to be made, a lot of bridges have already been crossed, which makes things so much more difficult. So let's go into the pragmatic aspects of these diseases. So with dementia and Alzheimer's, what we're talking about is cognitive decline, which means that the person is less and less capable mentally. So it's an illness, or these are illnesses which affect the mind, and they affect the emotions, and they affect the person physically. And of course it's all part of their spiritual journey, all this. And it's a particularly rough one. But this film is all about the pragmatic things to be aware of. That's all I want to focus on this one. So the very first thing I want you to be aware of is you are in a situation where you realise you're going to become the supporter, the carer, someone closely involved in their end-of-life process, because that's what this is ultimately. So far, that's the story, isn't it? Dementia and Alzheimer's, they don't end in physical cures, they end in the end of the life. That's how things are at the moment. I could say more about that, but no, keep the script, keep the script, right. So I want to say this, I actually tried to make these films 2 years ago, more than 2 years ago, and I just couldn't do it because I was so emotionally and in all ways involved in my mother's end of life. I couldn't make them while she was alive, I couldn't make them after she was dead. She had to be dead a good 2 years. 2.25 years have gone by. That's how I'm able to make this film, and that's a rule of thumb. If a major person in your life passes, give it a couple of years. Don't expect to be firing on all thrusters until that period of time has gone by. Really important to realise. So when it has become obvious that there's something going on, some cognitive decline has been noticed, it is significant, and the person is of an age and of a condition that you can see that that's just where this is going. The very first thing to do is to consider taking out or creating what's called an advanced decision. So you'll be able to find all this stuff online. So an advanced decision really is a piece of paper, and it's the most it's the easiest one to do, and you can just pick up any format online, any template, and fill it in. Really simple. But what it gets you and the person to do is to look at the issues and make some decisions so everyone knows what's going on before the shit really hits the fan big time, because it will. So in this advanced decision, one of the most significant things that happens is the person who's going through this illness, it's still possible to have a conversation with them, it's still possible to reason with them, and you can ask them questions and they're capable of answering. So when you're at this stage of the game, the advanced decision will give them the opportunity to let their loved ones, any carers and supporters, the GP, that's the general practitioner, the doctor, let all these people know what it is that they want. And they literally spell everything out. I want this, I want that, that's how I'd like things to be handled. And then it comes down to the bottom line, which is what we call in England the DNR, the do not attempt to resuscitate. This is perhaps the most important issue. It was very clear with my mother how things stood. In fact, she never wanted to go into a home, and that was something that we were not able to comply with eventually, unfortunately, but that did eventually happen, that was not a possibility for her. That's something I'm going to go into more detail in another film. But she did know that when medical interventions were required because she had some kind of secondary or tertiary illness which might be attempting to carry her off, like that's what pneumonia is. Pneumonia is often a secondary or a tertiary illness that actually is the final piece of the puzzle which delineates the end of life. She was very clear indeed, if she had a heart attack or anything at all whereby literally her heart stopped working, she did not want to be resuscitated. So as part of the advance decision, you get a very special form which you get in the UK through the NHS and the GP. So this is the GP in the NHS, and the patient is asked questions by the GP, and if the answers are such that that's what is agreed, then a special form is issued. It's got a red border all the way around it, and that goes with the advance decision, and that goes into a folder. And if at any time anything happens where any medical intervention is required, the person who's the carer or the supporter grabs that bit of paper and takes it with them in the ambulance. You've got to be on the ball with all this stuff, and this is perhaps one of the hardest things to get your head around. At a time in life when this person that's been so important to you and so significant to you in your life, they're on their way out, the end of life, rather than all this wonderful support being there for you, it's probably quite the opposite. You'll probably find you've got all this stuff to deal with, and it's down to you. It can be like this. So yes, that form got carried around to certain healthcare institutions in my mother's last 18 months, always very important. So that's another thing to be aware of. Do not attempt to resuscitate form and the advance decision. So these very easily done, easily filled out. So the advance decision, it's literally you and the person and the witness. When it's the DNR form, it's the GP, the medical practitioner. Now the next thing that not everyone is made aware of, because this is one of the biggest problems in a country like in the UK, where there's theoretically so much support, in practice the question is, but how do you even know about it? So when the person reaches a point that they need a lot of help and they can't be left for any real length of time, someone needs to make damn sure that the attendance allowance application is completed. Now these days, of course, it's all online. So you literally go to gov.uk if you're in the UK, and you put in it'd be gov.uk/attendance allowance, and you'd have this frighteningly large film which asks you a load of really difficult, distressing questions about the person concerned, and you fill that form in. And this then means that money is made available, and money goes into the person's bank account, and that money is used for their care. And that might help you to be able to have enough time to stay with that person, maybe move in with them, or maybe things have gone beyond that point already, and we are talking about people coming in throughout the day, professionals, people who are paid, be very helpful for paying those bills. And when it comes to the care home or the nursing home, then that money is also used to pay the horrifically large bills of those private companies mostly. So it's good to be aware of all these things. So that's the third step I'm mentioning, attendance allowance. Go on gov.uk, attendance allowance, steel yourself for the difficulty of answering all those questions, get it sent off, get the money into the bank account, and get the extra support, because you're probably going to need it. So that brings us to the last one. The last one is called power of attorney. Now, power of attorney, there are solicitors and people that can help you with this, and that is one option. There is another option though, which is you can go online, and this is what I ended up doing. If you go online, and you have to be careful about this, because there are people that will take money off you when you go online for doing it, and then you can also do it in a way whereby it costs you much less money. So do your research, use your cognitive ability to work out what is the best thing, because if I tell you how things were back in 2018, well, that's 4 years ago, there's no point. Things might have changed. So do your own research, but make sure you're not being taken for a ride by any scammers, and make sure that if you are capable of handling this without legal support, that you do so. So there's two parts of this. The first one is the medical and health power of attorney, and the second one is the property and money side of things. So these are two separate huge forms that have to be filled in, and when you do the whole thing online, you get the address of where they send them to. Talking about relatively small amounts of money, in £100 or so, that sort of thing, a little bit over, but again, I'm out of date, so prices may have changed, but we're not talking about an arm and leg, we're not talking about thousands. It can be done for a really modest outlay. So why do a power of attorney? Well, when my father passed, the trouble that was gone to get the solicitor to do it all, which cost a significant amount of money, all a complete waste of time, because he went from having a stomach upset to not being well to seeming to get over it, and then actually being taken off to hospital and ending up in intensive care, high dependency unit for just over a month, and eventually the plug was pulled. That was also fast, and at no point was it really relevant, unfortunately. But also, to be honest, I think we were also shocked that we weren't really able to invoke it as perhaps we could have done at certain key points. So we really lost out totally on that one. But with my mother, no, it was very, very useful. There were a number of times in the hospital when the question was asked, do you have power of attorney? And every time they said it, I would say yes. And usually that was enough, but I always had the paperwork with me, so if anyone was going to be nitpicking about it, I could just produce a piece of paper. Right, that's it, I'm calling the shots here, because that's the deal. The deal is, with the power of attorney, these very long, complicated forms are filled in, and they have power from the moment that person is no longer capable of making a decision, because they're too out of it because of the end of life process. Let's keep it simple that way. And what happens is, you've got the power of attorney, and you are the one that everyone defers to. You call the shots, you make the choices. And I'm tempted to digress and talk about a particularly difficult one when she broke her hip the second time, and it's like, no, let's not go into that, doesn't really matter. What I want to make it really clear to you, that a power of attorney is a very useful document to have. Now, it does require that you're able to have a moment of lucidity with the person in their end of life process, where you can get an agreement to this. Really important that you can get that done. But it did mean to say, in various situations to do with the do not attempt to resuscitate, and to do with this particular injury, that particular accident, that particular event, at all times I was able to act with the authority and competence which was given to me by the power of this document. So a power of attorney is very well worth looking into, and I have met people who say things like, well, actually I got mine done in my 50s. I thought, well, you know, why not? So some people actually get this done decades before it's even remotely relevant, and that's something else that you can consider if you feel that's something you want to look at. If there's someone who you just know in advance is going to be your primary support stroke caring person, then you could get it all set up decades in advance with that person, so that it's all taken care of, and you don't get this really awkward situation of, let me put it this way, well-meaning medical professionals taking over and violating the free will of the one whose end of life it is. That's why it's that important to get sorted. And there's lots of anecdotal evidence, certainly in the UK, of people's true wills being completely violated, sometimes through ignorance and sometimes through, I dare say it, willful malice. There you go. So those are three things: advance decision, do not attempt to resuscitate, attendance allowance, power of attorney. All worth considering getting sorted if you are in the situation of being a supporter or a carer of a loved one in their end of life process. Thank you very much. All the love to you.